My name is Clara, I'm 33, and my world came to a screeching halt at my sister Sophie's engagement party. I was just standing there trying to be invisible when her fiancé Ethan locked eyes with me from across the room and put me on trial in front of our entire family. Sophie had just finished tearing me down, sneering about my career as a family law magistrate, calling me a bitter woman who passes judgment on other people's lives because I couldn't build one of my own. In that stunned silence, Ethan got to his feet. His voice cut through the tension like a knife. "You're the magistrate here, Clara," he said. "So why don't you tell everyone what really happened 6 years ago?" The chatter died instantly. A thick, heavy silence fell over the room. I knew right then that the secret I had buried so deep, the one that had cost me everything, was about to detonate. Before I get into the rest of this, I'm curious to know where you're all listening from. The story I'm about to tell completely shattered my ideas about family, loyalty, and what justice really means. If you've ever been caught between protecting a loved one and standing up for the truth, go ahead and hit that like button. This whole family saga dragged me through some of the darkest moments of my life before I finally found my way back to the light. I hope that by telling my story, you'll understand why the most difficult judgments are often the ones we have to make about the people we're supposed to trust the most. And please subscribe if you want more stories about fighting for what's right, even when it feels like you'll lose everything. To make any sense of that night, you have to understand my relationship with Sophie. Growing up, we might as well have been from different planets. I was the textbook responsible older sister, the one with the perfect report cards who followed every rule. I studied relentlessly, did my chores without being asked, and basically oriented my entire existence around making our parents proud. I wasn't some kind of saint, but I did my best to live up to their impossible expectations. Sophie, on the other hand, was my complete opposite. She was 2 years younger, a whirlwind of rebellious energy and effortless charm, and somehow she was always our parents' favorite, no matter how much trouble she got into. I was the shy bookworm. She was the life of every party. She had this incredible ability to talk her way out of any situation, just by flashing a smile that could make you forget what you were even mad about. "Oh, Sophie's just spirited," my mom would say with a sigh after she'd snuck out and come home long past her curfew. "She's just finding her way," my dad would chime in when another one of her report cards was filled with failing grades. But if I came home with a B+ instead of an A, I was treated to a long, drawn-out lecture about not wasting my potential. That was the rhythm of our childhood. Sophie got away with murder, and I had to be flawless. I tried not to hold it against her. Deep down, she was still my little sister, and I loved her. I felt like it was my job to protect her, even from her own bad decisions. When it was time for me to go to college, I worked 2 part-time jobs to pay my way through. My parents could have helped, but they explained they were saving up for Sophie's future. She might need a bigger safety net, they said. I never argued. I was determined to make it on my own and took pride in my independence. My dream was law school, and I poured every ounce of myself into it. I graduated in the top tier of my class, passed the bar exam on my first attempt, and landed a position at a well-regarded law firm. But it didn't matter. At family dinners, my achievements were always a footnote to whatever wild new thing Sophie was up to. Whether it was a last-minute trip to Spain, funded by our parents, or a new business venture that was guaranteed to crash and burn within 6 months. As we got older, Sophie's habit of taking from me became more direct. She'd borrow money with breezy promises to pay me back that never materialized. She'd shamelessly flirt with guys I was dating, and with her magnetic personality, she often succeeded in luring them away. One time, she even went for a job that I'd been working towards for months, later claiming she had no idea I was even interested, and every single time I let it go. I forgave her, telling myself that's just what sisters do. They let things slide. My decision to become a family law magistrate wasn't what I originally envisioned for myself. I'd been practicing family law when I encountered a devastating case involving a little girl trapped between two neglectful, warring parents. It completely changed my focus. I knew I needed to be in a position where I could make a real difference for kids like her, to be the one who could shield them when their own families and the system itself let them down. So, when a magistrate position opened up, I went for it, and at 29, I became one of the youngest magistrates in the state. Sophie's reaction to my new job was, well, classic Sophie. She toasted me with a glass of expensive champagne, a smirk playing on her lips. Wow, so now you get to sit on a high horse and judge other people's families all day? How perfect for you, Miss Perfect. She laughed like it was all a big joke, but the envy in her eyes was unmistakable. After that, it became her new favorite pastime. At every holiday, every birthday, every family gathering, she'd find a new way to mock my job. So, did you get to break up any happy homes today, Your Honor? She'd ask across the Thanksgiving table. Or she'd introduce me to her friends by saying, "This is my sister. She couldn't cut it as a real lawyer, so she became a magistrate instead." Each jab was delivered with a sweet smile, a little bit of sisterly teasing. And my parents? They'd just laugh it off, telling me I needed to develop a thicker skin. "She's just kidding, Clara," my mom would say. "Why are you always so sensitive?" What they didn't know, what they refused to see, was that every one of those comments was like pouring salt in a wound they didn't even know I had. A wound from 6 years ago. The secret that cost me so much. The reason I would never have children of my own. I had developed severe complications after an emergency surgery I needed while I was taking care of Sophie's own child. The doctors had told me the infection could impact my fertility, but in that moment, all I could think about was getting better. By the time I had fully recovered, the damage was irreversible. I would never be able to carry my own child. Sophie knew. She knew exactly what I had sacrificed for her. And yet, she still used my childlessness as a weapon against me. When Sophie announced she was engaged to Ethan Hayes, I was honestly thrilled for her. I knew Ethan professionally. He was a sharp, respected prosecutor. He was kind, grounded, and stable, everything her past boyfriends were not. I held on to a sliver of hope that he would be a positive influence, that maybe finally Sophie would grow up. But as I saw them together at different family events, I couldn't help but wonder if Ethan really knew the person he was marrying. Did he see the selfish, sometimes cruel person hiding behind that dazzling smile? Or was he just as mesmerized by her performance as everyone else had always been? I kept my reservations to myself. After all, it wasn't my place to pass judgment on my sister's relationship, even if judging was literally my job. But as the date of their engagement dinner got closer, I had this sinking feeling in my stomach, a premonition that something was about to go horribly wrong. I just never imagined that it would be Ethan himself who would bring the whole house of cards crashing down around us. The engagement dinner was at my parents' house, the big, beautiful home in the suburbs where Sophie and I grew up. My mother had pulled out all the stops, with caterers, elaborate floral arrangements, and candles everywhere. It was the kind of event that was tailor-made for Sophie, where she could be the center of attention and soak in the adoration of everyone celebrating her. I showed up early, wanting to help, but really, I just needed to brace myself for the evening. I knew Sophie wouldn't be able to resist taking a few shots at me, reminding everyone that even with my professional title, I was still the single, childless sister who fell short of her standards. "Clara, sweetie, you didn't have to come so early," my mother said, fussing with a centerpiece. "But since you're here, could you double-check the place settings? Sophie wants everything to be absolutely perfect." Of course she did. And of course, perfect was always dictated by Sophie. "Sure, Mom," I said, forcing a smile. "How many are we expecting?" "Oh, about 20. Mostly family plus a few of Ethan's relatives. His parents couldn't fly in from Denver, which is a shame." I nodded, wondering if their absence was really a shame or a strategic retreat. I immediately felt bad for the thought and pushed it away. By 7, the house was buzzing with people. My aunts, uncles, and cousins, who had watched our sibling rivalry play out for years without ever grasping its true, bitter depths. A few of Sophie's friends were there, the kind who applauded her worst instincts, and Ethan's brother and sister-in-law, who looked a bit overwhelmed by the boisterous family dynamic. I was trying to blend into a corner, nursing a glass of wine and chatting with my cousin, when Sophie and Ethan made their grand entrance. Sophie was a vision in a stunning red dress that likely cost more than my car payment, her hand held up just so, showcasing the massive diamond on her finger. Ethan looked dapper in a perfectly fitted suit, his arm wrapped possessively around her waist, a look of pure adoration on his face. For a fleeting moment, seeing them so happy, I thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe Sophie had finally turned a corner. "Clara!" Sophie's voice rang out as she spotted me. She dragged Ethan over. "There's my big sister, the magistrate, always observing from the sidelines, aren't you, Claire?" And just like that, my momentary hope vanished. The night had just started, and the games had already begun. "You look stunning, Sophie," I said, deciding to ignore the dig. "Congratulations again, Ethan. I'm really so happy for both of you." Ethan gave me a warm smile. "Thank you, Clara. It really means a lot to have you here. Where else would she be?" Sophie laughed. "It's not like she has a family of her own to rush home to." I felt a hot flush creep up my neck, but I held my ground. My cousin shifted uncomfortably. "Sophie," Ethan said, a note of gentle warning in his voice, but Sophie just waved it off. "Oh, relax, Ethan. I'm just teasing her. Clara knows I don't mean anything by it. Right, Claire?" Before I could muster a reply, my mom called everyone to dinner. I found my assigned seat and sighed internally. Sophie had placed me directly across from them, guaranteeing me a front-row view of their perfect happiness all night. The first course came and went, and I managed to keep my anxiety in check, making small talk and laughing when appropriate. But as the main course was served, Sophie's focus zeroed in on me again. "So, Clara, any juicy cases lately?" she asked, her knife slicing into a piece of filet mignon. "Any families you had to tear apart this week?" "Sophie," my father said mildly, "that's not a very nice thing to say." "What?" "I'm just interested in her work," she protested with wide-eyed innocence. "Clara's the one who gets to decide which parents are fit to raise their kids and which ones aren't. That's a huge responsibility." "It is," I said, keeping my voice as steady as I could. "And I don't take it lightly." "I'm sure you don't," Sophie said. "But doesn't it ever feel weird, making those calls when you don't have kids of your own? I mean, how can you really understand what it's like to be a parent?" The table fell silent. Even my mother looked uneasy. "I may not have children," I said, choosing my words with extreme care, "but I understand the law, and I understand what children need to feel safe and loved." "Of course you do," my mother jumped in, desperate to change the subject. "Sophie, dear, why don't you tell everyone about your honeymoon plans?" Sophie was happy to oblige, launching into a gushing description of a five-star resort in Tahiti. But the ceasefire was short-lived. As dessert was being served, she circled back to her favorite topic, my personal failings. "Clara, have you ever considered trying those dating apps?" she asked out of the blue. "My friend met her husband on one. They're super easy to use, even for people who aren't great with technology." "I'm perfectly fine with technology, Sophie," I replied tightly. "And yes, I've tried them." "And," she pushed, "no luck? I just haven't found the right person yet." "Well, you might want to get a move on," she said, her voice dripping with faux concern. "That biological clock of yours isn't getting any quieter." I froze, my dessert fork hovering in midair. She knew. She knew children weren't an option for me. She knew exactly why. And still, she deliberately twisted the knife. My parents exchanged a quick, uncomfortable glance, but, as always, said nothing. They never defended me. "Maybe Clara is just focused on her career right now," Ethan offered, clearly trying to douse the flames. Sophie let out a sharp laugh. "Oh, she's always focused on her career. A real modern woman, our Clara. Successful, independent, doesn't need a man or a family to feel complete." I set my fork down on the plate with a soft clink. "There is absolutely nothing wrong with being focused on a career." "Of course not," Sophie purred, her sincerity as fake as a $3 bill. "Especially when it's all you have. I mean, let's be real. You're basically a failed lawyer who judges other people's families because you can't have your own." The air was sucked out of the room. My cousin let out a small gasp. My aunt covered her mouth. Even my father looked stunned by the sheer venom in her words. But before I could even process the attack, before anyone could react, Ethan placed his napkin on the table and stood. The friendly, easygoing man was gone, replaced by someone with a hard, determined look in his eye. He looked from me to Sophie, and then back to me. "You're the magistrate here tonight," he said, his voice ringing with authority. "So why don't you tell everyone what really happened 6 years ago?" The air in the room grew so thick I could barely draw a breath. All the color drained from Sophie's face. "Ethan, what are you doing?" she hissed. But his eyes were locked on me, waiting, daring me. And in that one terrifying second, I knew. He knew. Somehow Ethan had unearthed the truth. The secret I had guarded for 6 years, the one that had cost me my future. The question was, did I have the strength to finally say it out loud? I had stayed silent for so long to protect her. But as I looked around the table, at my parents who always chose her, at my relatives who watched her bully me for years, at Sophie herself, her perfect face now twisted in a mask of fear, I had to wonder, who was I really protecting? And what had it cost me? The weight of that secret had been burying me alive. Maybe it was time to let it go. If you've ever had to decide between keeping a toxic family secret and speaking the truth, you know exactly how I felt in that moment. The silence is a heavy burden, but breaking it is even more terrifying. I was on the verge of changing everything, for better or for worse. Stay with me, and I'll tell you what really happened 6 years ago and how it tore all of our lives apart. 6 years earlier, my life was on a completely different track. I was 27, an associate at a family law firm, and I was dating a wonderful man named Ben. We were serious, talking about marriage and a future together. Sophie, then 25, was living her best life, or so it seemed on social media. Her feed was a constant stream of glamorous parties, exotic trips, and a revolving door of handsome, if questionable, men. My parents fretted about her lack of direction, but Sophie would just laugh and say she was building her personal brand. In reality, I was starting to hear whispers about her behavior, rumors of heavy drug use, reckless partying, and affairs with married men. But every time I tried to talk to her, to express my concern, she'd lash out, accusing me of being jealous. "Not everyone wants your boring, predictable life, Clara," she'd sneer. "Some of us actually want to live." So I backed off. I focused on my own life, on Ben, on building my career. Sophie and I grew more distant, our interactions limited to strained family holidays, where she'd play the part of the perfect, loving sister for our parents' benefit. Then, the phone rang in the middle of the night, and everything changed. It was 3 a.m. I grabbed my phone, my heart pounding with that specific dread that only a late-night call can bring. "Hello?" I mumbled. "Clara." It was Sophie's voice, but it was raspy and slurred, almost unrecognizable. "I need you. I need help." "Sophie, what is it? Where are you?" The Sunset Lodge, room 117, come alone. Don't tell Mom and Dad, please." The line went dead before I could ask another question. I shook Ben awake, quickly explained the little I knew, and we raced over to the motel together. It was in a seedy part of town, the kind of place that rents rooms by the hour. I was sick with fear, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. Room 117 was at the far end of a grim, poorly lit hallway. I knocked lightly, calling her name. The door creaked open, and I saw my sister's face. It was bruised, and one of her eyes was swollen completely shut. "Oh my God, Sophie," I breathed. "What happened?" She yanked me inside, and Ben followed, closing the door behind us. The room was a wreck. Clothes were everywhere. Empty liquor bottles littered the cheap furniture, and the air was thick with the sour smell of vomit and something acrid and chemical that I'd later learn was meth. But it wasn't Sophie's bruised face or the trashed room that sent a shockwave through me. It was the tiny figure huddled on the far side of the bed, a little girl, no more than 3 years old, staring at us with huge, terrified eyes. "Sophie," I whispered, my voice trembling, "whose child is that?" Sophie just crumpled, collapsing into a heap on the floor, her body racked with gut-wrenching sobs. "She's mine," she finally choked out. "Her name is Maya." I stared at her, my mind refusing to process the words. "Yours? How? When did? I didn't even know you were pregnant." "Nobody did," she wept. "I hid it. I was going to give her up for adoption, but then I couldn't do it. So I've been raising her." Kind of? Ben asked, his voice sharp with alarm. He had moved toward the bed, his gaze fixed on the silent little girl. "I have a sitter usually," Sophie said defensively, "but she quit. Said I wasn't paying her. And tonight my ex-boyfriend, found out about Maya. He went crazy, said I lied to him, which I did, but he didn't have to hit me. Ben was a resident physician, and his medical instincts kicked in. He was gently checking over the little girl. "Clara," he said in a low, urgent voice, "this child is severely malnourished, and I think she's running a fever. She needs to see a doctor. Now." I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw past the bruises. She was skeletal, her once vibrant face hollowed out by what I now realized was a serious drug addiction. She couldn't even care for herself, let alone a toddler. "We're taking you both to the hospital," I said, my voice firm, "right now." For once, Sophie didn't fight me, which scared me more than anything. At the ER, the doctors confirmed Ben's fears. Maya was dangerously underweight, had a raging ear infection, and showed clear signs of long-term neglect. Sophie tested positive for a cocktail of drugs and was admitted for detox and observation. Child Protective Services was called, as required by law. I spent hours in a cold, sterile hospital hallway, answering questions from a world-weary social worker. No, I had no idea my sister had a child. No, I didn't know the extent of her drug use. Yes, I would do whatever I could to help. When the social worker started talking about foster care for Maya, a fierce protective instinct flared up inside me. This was my niece, my family. I couldn't let her get lost in the system. "I'll take her," I heard myself say. "While my sister gets the help she needs, I'll take temporary custody of Maya." The following weeks were a chaotic blur of court filings, social worker visits, and a crash course in parenting a traumatized toddler. Ben was supportive but clearly overwhelmed by the sudden upheaval in our lives. When I finally told my parents, they were stunned, more by Sophie's addiction than by the existence of a secret grandchild. They offered to take Maya, but I hesitated. Their lifelong habit of enabling Sophie made me worry they wouldn't be able to provide the structure she desperately needed. So Maya came home with me, and for the next several months, as Sophie bounced between detox and a long-term rehab facility, I became a mother to this quiet, frightened little girl. It was incredibly hard. Maya woke up screaming from nightmares. She was terrified of loud noises and sudden movements. She barely spoke, but slowly, with endless patience, professional therapy, and a whole lot of love, she started to heal. She started to trust me. She started to smile. And I fell completely, irrevocably in love with her. Maya was the center of my universe. Ben and I tried to make it work, but the strain of our new reality was too much for our relationship. We eventually broke up, but I never once regretted my choice. Then, 6 months after Maya came into my life, disaster struck. I was hit with excruciating abdominal pain and rushed into emergency surgery for a ruptured appendix. The infection had spread, and it was life-threatening. The surgery saved me, but the massive infection left behind extensive internal scarring. The doctors were kind but direct. I would never be able to conceive a child. At the time, I was so focused on recovering and getting back to Maya that the news didn't fully register. The true weight of that loss wouldn't hit me until much, much later. I was still in recovery when Sophie showed up, 8 months after that horrible night at the motel. She looked like a different person. She was clean, healthy, and had a new man on her arm, a wealthy real estate investor named James, who was clearly infatuated with her. "I'm ready to be a mother now," Sophie announced, as if she were reclaiming a misplaced handbag. "James and I are getting a place together. He adores kids. He can't wait to be a father to Maya." I was speechless. After everything Maya had been through, after all the progress she had made, Sophie thought she could just waltz back in and take her? "Sophie," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "Maya is finally stable. She's happy. A big change right now could be really damaging for her." "She's my daughter, Clara," Sophie said, her jaw set in that familiar stubborn line. "I made mistakes, I know that. But I'm better now. It's my right to raise my own child." I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her that rights come with responsibilities she had completely abandoned. I wanted to fight for Maya. But then James casually mentioned his team of high-powered lawyers. I knew that as much as I loved Maya, I was just her aunt. Sophie was her mother. If she could prove she was sober and stable, no judge would deny her custody. The irony that I would one day become that judge was not lost on me. So I did what I believed was right for Maya. I worked with Sophie and James to create a transition plan. I set up family counseling sessions. I made Sophie promise she would stick to Maya's routines, continue her therapy, and always put her daughter first. "I will, Clara. I swear," she insisted. "I've changed. I know you don't believe me, but I have." I wanted to believe her. I desperately wanted to believe Maya would be safe. The day Sophie came to take Maya was the single worst day of my life. It was worse than the day the doctor told me I was infertile, worse than the day Ben left. Maya clung to me, her little body trembling. "Don't go, Auntie Clara," she sobbed. "Stay with you." I held her tight, breathing in the scent of her hair, my own tears streaming down my face. "I'll see you so soon, my sweet girl," I promised, my voice breaking. So soon. Eventually, Sophie had to pry Maya's arms from around my neck. She carried her out to the waiting car, and I could hear my niece's cries echoing down the hallway long after they were gone. A month later, Sophie and James moved across the country. For a while, she sent pictures and let me video chat with Maya. But the calls grew shorter, the updates more sporadic. And then they stopped. My texts went unanswered. My calls went to voicemail. I considered flying out there, but what could I do? Sophie had legal custody. As far as I knew, Maya was being cared for. I had to let go and try to rebuild my own shattered life. The gaping hole Maya left behind is what led me to pursue the magistrate position. I had seen the family court system from the inside, and I wanted to be in a position to fix its flaws. I kept what happened private, partly to protect Sophie, partly to protect Maya, and partly to protect myself from the unbearable pain of it all. My parents knew a fraction of the story, but they didn't know the full extent of Sophie's neglect, and they certainly didn't know about my infertility. That was a private grief I carried alone. And so the secret stayed buried, a constant shadow in my life, until Ethan dragged it out into the light at that disastrous dinner. Back at the dinner table, the air crackled with tension. Sophie was the first to find her voice, high and shaky with panic. "Ethan, I don't know what you're talking about, but this is not the time or the place." "Then when is the time, Sophie?" Ethan shot back, his tone gentle but firm. "After we're married? After I'm living inside another one of your carefully constructed lies?" He turned to me, his expression apologetic. "Clara, I am so sorry to do this to you, but I was at work last week and I came across some old case files involving your sister. I've been trying to get her to talk to me about it, but she just keeps denying everything." Sophie shot up from her chair, knocking it over. "You had no right. Those files are confidential." "I wasn't looking for them," Ethan said calmly. "I was researching a case with similar circumstances and your name came up. Once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it." My mother looked back and forth between us, her face a mask of confusion. "What files? Rachel, what is he talking about?" Sophie ignored her, her rage now fully directed at me. "This is your fault," she hissed. "You're just jealous. You've always been jealous of my happiness, and now you're trying to ruin it." That was it. The injustice of her words after years of silence, years of her cruelty, years of protecting her, something inside me finally snapped. "My fault?" I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. "Sophie, I have kept your secrets for 6 years. I have let you mock me and belittle me. I have let you make jokes about my infertility when you, of all people, know why I can't have children. I have done nothing but protect you, and this is how you thank me?" "Clara," my father warned, "this is a private family matter. We don't need to air our dirty laundry in front of everyone." I let out a short, bitter laugh. "Of course not. God forbid we ever acknowledge anything real in this family. God forbid Sophie ever has to face a single consequence for her actions." "What actions?" my mother demanded. "Will someone please tell me what is going on?" I looked at Ethan. He gave me a slight, encouraging nod. I took a deep, shuddering breath and told them everything. The 3 a.m. phone call. Finding Sophie, high and beaten, with a toddler I never knew she had. Taking custody of my niece, Maya, while Sophie went to rehab. Falling in love with her. The emergency surgery that left me infertile. Sophie's return, her decision to take Maya away. The last time I spoke to Maya was over 5 years ago, I finished, my voice cracking. Sophie moved and cut off all contact. I let her go because I thought she'd changed. I thought Maya would be safe with her mother. The silence that followed was absolute. My mother was the first to speak, her voice a faint whisper. "You had a baby?" she asked Sophie. "We have a granddaughter we've never met?" Sophie's face was now bright red. "It wasn't like that. Clara is exaggerating, making it sound so much worse than it was. I was going through a hard time, but I got better. I took responsibility." "Did you?" Ethan asked quietly. "Because the records I found say you abandoned Maya again less than a year after you took her from Clara." It was my turn to be stunned. "What?" Ethan's face was grim. When her relationship with James ended, Sophie just left Maya with him. He tried to care for her, but he wasn't her biological father and had no legal rights. He eventually had to surrender her to social services. Maya ended up in foster care. The room started to spin. Maya, in foster care, after everything I did to keep her safe? "Is that true?" I asked Sophie, my voice barely audible. "James was supposed to take care of her," Sophie cried defensively. "He promised he would. He had the money, the big house. But then he met someone else, and suddenly he didn't want to be a father anymore." "So you just left your child?" My father's voice was filled with a disbelief I'd never heard from him before. "Your own daughter?" "I was in a bad place," Sophie shrieked. "I couldn't take care of her. I thought she'd be better off with him." I felt physically sick. All these years I had told myself that at least Maya was safe and loved. The thought that she had been abandoned all over again, that she had ended up in the very system I had fought to protect her from, was unbearable. "How could you not tell me?" I sobbed, tears finally breaking free. "I would have taken her back. You knew I would have." "I was ashamed, okay?" Sophie shouted. "I failed." "Is that what you want to hear? Perfect Clara would never fail, would she? Perfect Clara would have been the perfect mother." "That's not fair," I whispered. "I loved her. I still love her, and you took her from me." "Stop it, both of you," my mother broke in. "This is getting us nowhere. Rachel, we will deal with your lies later. For now, Ethan, are you saying our granddaughter is in foster care right now?" Ethan hesitated. "The records I saw are from a few years ago. I don't know what her current status is." The dinner party was officially over. My relatives were whispering among themselves, some looking shocked, others judgmental. My Aunt Gloria stood up. "I think perhaps we should leave the family to sort this out," she announced. Within minutes, the house had emptied, leaving just the four of us, my parents, Ethan, Sophie, and me. "I can't believe you did this," Sophie snarled at Ethan. "You humiliated me. I tried to talk to you for a week, Sophie," he replied. "You avoided me. And then tonight, seeing how you treated Clara, I couldn't stay silent. So you blew up our engagement?" "Great plan, Ethan." "Sophie, stop," my father interrupted, his voice sharp. "This isn't about Ethan. This is about you lying to this entire family for years, about you abandoning your child, twice." Sophie's face crumpled. "I knew you'd judge me. That's why I never told you. We're your parents," my mother said, her voice breaking. "We would have helped. Like you helped when Clara took Maya." Sophie shot back. "You just stood by, disappointed in me, because you were on drugs," my father yelled. "What did you expect, Sophie? A party?" As they argued, Ethan came and sat beside me. "I'm so sorry," he said quietly. "I never meant to ambush you. I couldn't marry her without knowing the full truth." I just nodded, still reeling. "How much do you know?" "About Maya?" "Just what I said. The file was from when James surrendered her. I don't know where she went from there." I have to find her, I said, a new resolve hardening inside me. I have to know she's okay. I'll help you, Ethan promised. Across the room, the argument had reached a fever pitch. This is all Clara's fault, Sophie wailed. She's always been jealous. She turned you against me, and now she's turned Ethan against me too. To my utter shock, my mother rolled her eyes. Oh, stop it, Sophie. That victim act might work on other people, but we know you. This is entirely your own fault. Sophie stared at our mother, dumbfounded. It was the first time in her life our mother hadn't rushed to her defense. I'm leaving, Sophie announced, grabbing her purse. Ethan, are you coming? Ethan stood, but he didn't move toward her. I think we need some space, Sophie. Are you breaking up with me? Over this? I'm just saying we need time. This is a lot. Fine, she snapped. Take all the time you need. But don't expect me to be here waiting. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard a picture fell off the wall. The four of us stood in the wreckage of the evening. I should go, I finally said. I have court in the morning. Clara, my father started, but I just shook my head. Not now, Dad. I can't. Ethan walked me to the door. I'll call you tomorrow, he promised. About finding her. I drove home in a complete fog. The next morning, I woke up to a barrage of missed calls and texts from my parents. I ignored them. I was about to leave for work when my phone rang again. I answered without looking, assuming it was the courthouse. Hello? Clara, my mother's voice was thin and furious. We need to talk about what you did. What I did? I repeated, stunned. You humiliated your sister. You dredged up ancient history. Sophie is heartbroken. I couldn't believe it. Mom, Sophie lied to us for years. She abandoned your grandchild. And you're mad at me? That's in the past, she insisted. She had turned her life around. She was finally happy, and you couldn't stand it. You had to destroy it. I didn't destroy anything, I said, my own anger rising. Ethan found out on his own. All I did was tell the truth when I was asked. You could have protected your sister. Like I've been doing my whole life, I shot back. When does Sophie take responsibility, Mom? When do you and Dad stop making excuses for her? There was a long silence. We always tried to be fair, she finally said. But you were always so strong. Sophie, she needed us more. Sophie needed boundaries, I corrected her. She needed to learn that actions have consequences. Instead, you taught her she could do whatever she wanted and I would clean up the mess. We just want peace in the family, my mother pleaded. Can't you just apologize to Sophie? I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. Apologize? Mom, the only thing that's going to make this right is finding Maya and making sure she's safe. And that's exactly what I'm going to do, with or without your help. I hung up the phone, my hands shaking. For the first time in my life, I was done. Done protecting Sophie. Done enabling my parents. Done sacrificing myself for a fake family peace. It was time to find my niece. If you've ever had to stand up to your family and choose what's right over what's comfortable, you know it takes every ounce of courage you have. But sometimes, that moment of standing in your truth is the first step toward healing wounds you didn't even know could be healed. As I set out to find Maya, I had no idea how this journey would transform not just my life, but the lives of everyone in my family. Stay with me as I share what happened next. The day after the dinner party from hell, I called in sick to work. I couldn't possibly focus on anyone else's family drama when my own was imploding. Instead, I met Ethan at a quiet coffee shop, away from the prying eyes of the legal community. Thanks for coming, I said as he sat down. He looked exhausted. Of course, he replied. How are you? I gave a weak laugh, about as you'd expect. My mother called to blame me for ruining Sophie's engagement and demand I apologize. Ethan just shook his head in disbelief. "Welcome to my family," I said wryly. "It's been the pattern our whole lives." "I'm starting to see that," he said. "I knew Sophie had issues, but I had no idea. The depth of the lies, the manipulation. It's like I was engaged to a stranger." "Sophie is an expert at showing people exactly what they want to see," I said. "You're not a fool for falling for it. We all have blind spots for the people we love." We sat in silence for a moment before I steered the conversation back to the only thing that mattered. "You said you could help me find Maya?" Ethan straightened up, his prosecutor mode kicking in. "Yes. I have a contact at Child Protective Services. She owes me a favor. She's going to look into Maya's case file. It might take a few days." "I understand," I said, my gratitude warring with my impatience. "Thank you, Ethan. I know this puts you in a terrible position with Sophie." He hesitated. "I don't know what's going to happen with us. I care about her, but I can't trust her. And without trust, there's nothing." I nodded, feeling a pang of guilt that was quickly replaced by a sense of grim reality. Sophie had done this to herself. "What about you?" Ethan asked. "Are you prepared for what we might find? Maya would be 7 now? She might not even remember you." The thought was a dagger to my heart, but I had already considered it. "I know. And if she's in a good home, if she's happy and adopted, I won't interfere. I just need to know she's okay. But if she's not okay, if she's still in the system, then I'll do whatever it takes to get her back. I failed her once. I won't do it again." 3 days later, Ethan's contact came through. Maya was indeed still in the foster system. She had been moved between 4 different homes in 3 years. Her current placement was with a foster mother named Eleanor Davis, who specialized in children with emotional trauma. I took another day off work and drove to the quiet suburban street where Mrs. Davis lived. It was a modest but well-kept house with toys scattered in the yard. I sat in my car for a long time, my hands trembling. What if Maya hated me? What if she didn't remember me at all? Finally, I forced myself to the door and rang the bell. A woman in her 50s with kind, tired eyes answered. "Mrs. Davis? My name is Clara Morgan. I'm Maya's aunt." She nodded. "Yes, of course. Please come in. Maya's at school. She'll be home in an hour. It's probably best if we talk first." I sat on a comfortable sofa, my heart hammering against my ribs. "How is she?" I asked. "Maya is a complicated child," Mrs. Davis said gently. "She's incredibly bright and creative, but she has deep-seated trust issues. She struggles to believe that people won't eventually leave her." My heart ached. Does she ever talk about her past? About her mother? Or me? She doesn't say much, but she has this one memory she talks about sometimes. A woman she calls Auntie Clara, who used to sing her a song about a dinosaur and make her feel safe. Is that you? Tears sprang to my eyes. "Yes," I whispered. "That's me." Mrs. Davis's expression softened. "I thought so. Lily has been a difficult placement, as they say. She tests boundaries, almost daring you to send her away. And a few families did. She's been with me for 8 months. We're making progress." "What are my options?" I asked. "Legally?" "That depends on what you want," she said. "Are you seeking custody?" "Ultimately, yes," I said, "but only if it's what's best for Maya. I've never stopped loving her." "I appreciate you saying that," Mrs. Davis said. "Too many biological relatives think they can just waltz back in without understanding the damage." "I understand," I assured her. "I'm a family law magistrate. I see this every day. My experience with Maya is what led me to my career." Just then the front door opened and a whirlwind of children's voices filled the hall. "That'll be them," Mrs. Davis said, standing. "Let me talk to her first. We should keep this first meeting short." I nodded, my stomach in knots. A few minutes later, Mrs. Davis returned, and standing shyly behind her was a little girl with Sophie's delicate features, but my father's serious dark eyes. It was Maya. She was 7 years old. "Maya," Mrs. Davis said gently, "this is Clara. She says she's your Auntie Clara." Maya stared at me, her expression unreadable. Then, in a tiny voice, she asked, "The dinosaur song?" I nodded, unable to speak. "You used to sing the dinosaur song," she said. A statement, not a question. The one about the dinosaur who was scared of the dark. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "And you made shadow puppets." "That's right," I said, smiling through my tears. "You remember?" "I thought you were gone," she said, a hint of accusation in her voice, like everyone else. "I'm so sorry, Maya," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I would have come sooner if I'd known. I will never, ever leave you again. I promise." She looked at Mrs. Davis, who nodded. "Miss Ellie says you want to visit me." "I'd like that very much," I said, "if it's okay with you." "I guess," she said with the feigned nonchalance of a child afraid to hope. "If you want to." "I do," I said, "very much." Our first meeting was brief, but when it was time for me to go, Maya surprised me. "Will you come back tomorrow?" she asked. I looked at Mrs. Davis, who smiled. "I think that would be just fine." "Why don't you come for dinner?" Over the next few weeks, I spent every spare moment with Maya. I rearranged my court schedule, and with Mrs. Davis's support, we established a routine. Meanwhile, Ethan and I were building a legal case. "Your prior temporary custody is a huge point in your favor," he told me. "The main hurdle will be explaining why you lost contact." "I trusted my sister," I said simply. By the time I realized something was wrong, she had disappeared. "There's something else," Ethan said, his face grim. "I did some more digging. Sophie has been collecting child support payments from James all these years, even after she abandoned Maya. The betrayal shouldn't have surprised me, but it still felt like a punch to the gut. She had abandoned her daughter but kept the money meant to care for her. "It's fraud," Ethan said, "and it's leverage we can use in court." Filing the custody petition felt both terrifying and liberating. I was finally taking a stand, not just for Maya, but for myself. As expected, Sophie retaliated. She called my parents, claiming I was trying to steal her daughter. She even contacted my supervising judge, accusing me of abusing my position. I ignored it all. With Ethan's help and Mrs. Davis's guidance, I stayed focused on one thing: giving Maya the stable, loving home she had never had. The night before our court date, Sophie called me. "Clara," she said, her voice unusually subdued. "We need to talk." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her. She looked haggard, the polished mask she usually wore finally cracking. "Drop the custody case," she pleaded. "I'll make it right with Mom and Dad. We can go back to how things were." "How things were?" I asked, incredulous. "You mean with you treating me like dirt while our parents look the other way? With Maya in foster care while you cash her support checks? That's your idea of making it right?" "You don't understand," she insisted. "You're tearing this family apart. Maybe this family needs to be torn apart so it can be rebuilt the right way," I said. "She's my daughter," she cried. "Being a mother is more than biology, Sophie," I said softly. "It's about showing up. You've had 7 years to show up for Maya. You chose not to. Now I'm choosing to." Her expression hardened. "You will regret this," she hissed. "When you're all alone with a broken kid who's more than you can handle, you'll wish you had listened." I just stood up and walked away. Her threats no longer had any power over me. I was no longer the little girl desperate for my family's approval. I was a woman fighting for what was right. Entering a family courtroom as a petitioner was a surreal experience. I sat with my attorney, a man I respected, while Ethan sat right behind me, a silent pillar of support. Sophie arrived with the most expensive lawyer in the city, my parents trailing behind her. They sat directly behind Sophie, a clear statement of their allegiance. I refused to look at them. The hearing began. My lawyer laid out the facts methodically. Mrs. Davis testified about Maya's progress and how she thrived in my presence. Ethan testified about his discovery of the case files and Sophie's financial fraud. Then it was my turn. I spoke about my love for Maya, about the painful decision to return her to Sophie, and about my regret. Sophie's lawyer was brutal. He painted me as a jealous, vindictive sister using a child as a pawn. "Isn't it true you've always resented your sister?" he sneered. "My relationship with my family is complicated," I said, looking at the judge. "But this case is not about me. It's about what is best for Maya." When Sophie took the stand, she put on an Oscar-worthy performance, crying about her past struggles and her deep love for her daughter. But under the judge's sharp questioning, her story began to unravel. Her explanations for abandoning Maya and for taking the child support money were flimsy and contradictory. The final testimony came from Maya's therapist, who stated in no uncertain terms that removing Maya from my care now would be catastrophic for her emotional development. The judge announced she would deliver her ruling the next morning. That night was the longest of my life. Around midnight, my father called. "Clara," he said, his voice heavy, "your mother is a wreck. Our family is falling apart." "This isn't about revenge, Dad," I said, my voice tired. "This is about love. It's about taking on the responsibility of raising a traumatized child because she deserves a chance." There was a long silence. "Rachel says she's changed," he said. "Maybe she has," I replied. "But Maya can't be a test case for her growth. She needs permanence." Another long pause. "Your mother and we should have seen it," he said, his voice thick. "We should have been there for you both. I don't know what the judge will decide tomorrow, but I want you to know. I'm proud of you, Clara, for standing up for what's right." I hung up, tears streaming down my face. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. The next morning, I walked into the courtroom, my nerves shot. My parents came in and, this time, sat in the middle of the gallery, not behind Sophie. The judge entered and got straight to the point. "In custody cases," she began, "the court's sole concern is the best interest of the child." She reviewed the evidence, her voice even. "I find a clear and disturbing pattern of behavior from Rachel Morgan. Conversely, Clara Morgan has demonstrated unwavering commitment to Maya's well-being. The child is thriving in her care." My heart started to pound. Therefore, the judge declared, "It is the judgment of this court that full legal and physical custody of Maya Morgan be granted to Clara Morgan, effective immediately." A wave of relief so intense it almost buckled my knees washed over me. The judge also ordered Sophie to repay all the child support money into a trust for Maya's education and established a schedule of supervised visitation. "This ruling is not meant to sever your relationship with your daughter," she told Sophie sternly. "The door is not closed unless you choose to close it." Sophie stormed past me without a word. My parents approached, their faces a mixture of relief and shame. "Congratulations," my father said. I hope you'll let us be part of her life." "She could use grandparents," I said, my voice soft. It was a beginning. 6 months later, Lily, or Maya as she now preferred to be called, was a different child. She was thriving. The nightmares were less frequent, her laughter more common. It wasn't easy. There were tantrums and tears and moments I felt completely overwhelmed. But we were building a life, a real family. Sophie showed up for 2 supervised visits, behaved horribly, and then disappeared. A few months later, we got word she had moved to California and signed away her parental rights completely. "Does that mean you're my forever mom now?" Maya asked me one night. "I would like to be," I said, my heart swelling. "If that's what you want." She nodded seriously. "I want that." A few weeks after that, I was sitting on the bench in my own courtroom, looking out at the families before me. I saw them all differently now, not as cases, but as people, tangled in the messy, complicated, beautiful business of being a family. That evening, I came home to find Maya on the front steps, holding a drawing. It was a picture of 2 stick figures, one tall and one small, holding hands under a big, smiling sun. The tall one was wearing a black robe and holding a little gavel. Underneath, in careful, wobbly letters, it said, "My mom, the real judge." I knelt and pulled her into a hug, my face buried in her hair, overwhelmed with a love so fierce it took my breath away. It wasn't the life I had ever imagined for myself. It was so much better. It was real, and it was ours. If this story has touched something in you about family, justice, or finding the courage to stand in your truth, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. We all face moments when we have to choose between keeping the peace and doing what's right, especially with family. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments about a time when you had to make a difficult choice for the right reasons. Did it turn out the way you expected? What did you learn? Your experiences matter, and they might help someone else facing a similar crossroads. Before you go, please hit that like button if my story resonated with you, and subscribe to hear more real stories about family dynamics, personal growth, and finding strength in unexpected places. Thank you for staying with me through this journey. From that shocking moment at the dinner table to the new life Maya and I have built together. Sometimes the hardest judgments we make are the ones that finally set us free.